this is what I want to do. I like autumn colours, you'd never have guessed, would you? Watercolours today, and really I'm just using very simple materials. I have a hake brush and my very favourite number 8, and this is it's terribly well used, this is my rigger brush. It's looking terribly pathetic at the moment. I'm just going to wet it so that you can see it properly. Lovely, lovely, fine rigger brush, because this is what we're going to use to paint our tiny, teeny little lines on our teasel. The first thing we need to do is put some mask down on the paper. Let's get on with that. I want to use I've got an old scruffy brush that I use for masking, which seems to work quite well. It's just this old tatty brush, and to make sure that I don't go inadvertently using it to paint with, because it really is a blunt old brush here. Look, I've worn it out. I've put some nail varnish around the ferrule so that I know that that's my old brush for scrubbing, rubbing, masking fluid, whatever. And just giving my mask a bit of a shake. And I want to wet my brush and come in here, and I'm just going to soak my brush. And I'm going to do this purely and simply because this makes sure the brush stays safe in this nasty gooey muck. I'll roll it to get rid of any bubbles. I've put that right up to the ferrule so that it's full. And I want to roll it to get rid of the bubbles. Next thing I want to do is dip, and let's put ourselves a nice stem in here. And as I say, I'm not going to slavishly follow the photograph, not really interested in that. Come on, let's just make it up as we go along. So our stem, I want it thicker as it comes down the stem to thinner up this neck of the woods. And then the next thing I want to do here is just block in this lovely lozenge shape of our teasel. I hope you haven't got too many shadows here. I don't want to blind you with shadows. It's difficult, this game, you know, because you start off thinking to yourself, this is my space to paint and it suits me and I'm happy with that. And now, of course, given the times that we're in, suddenly filming, it's just a whole new ball game. And, you know, you've got to get your head around all the technology, and you buy the things that you think are right and they're not always correct. We're doing our best, all of us, and I hope that it's good enough for everyone. Rinse the brush, and I'm just going to wipe it to make sure that I've removed everything from the ferrule here. And because I soaked it, you see, it's all come out and my brush is lovely and clean. Really useful. Same applies here. I now want to add some lovely little delicate bits and pieces. I'm wetting my rigger brush, and again I'm going to soap it well. Come in there and give it a good dose of soap. Again, turn it round to make sure you get rid of the bubbles. Don't want those on there. And this time I'm thinking I want to add all these teeny tiny little hairs. These stems are seriously prickly. I did a lesson recently with my Alresford art group here in Hampshire, and husband and I went out for a walk down at Hayling Island, and we found the most beautiful walk full of teasels. That's what gave me the idea. And I said to him, oh, I want some of those for my art lessons. Please, please go and grab me some teasels, because it was down a bank and I'm a bit dodgy with things like that. And this poor man scrambled down the bank for me and grabbed hold of a handful of teasels, and I forgot to tell him that they're prickly. And so of course he grabbed it and landed up with a handful. So poor man. I do appreciate my hubby. And then from this side I'm going to put in hope you can see that and my hand's not in the way. All these fine, fine, delicate little hairs here. Now what I am trying to do, and it's awkward doing it this way, come from the teasel outwards, because wherever you put the brush down first is the widest, thickest, blobby bit of line. And it thins and it's finer as you come away, as you lift off. So down, push, lift. And if I come in the other way, I'm going to land up with all the teardrop blobs this side and the thinner lines coming into my teasel. So we're putting this all down the left hand side, and I'll explain why in a minute whilst this dries. So I want these lovely, some of them longer, just like cat's fur, some a little bit longer, and point some of them upwards. There we are, that'll do us. Right, so we've got quite a few there. Are you able to see that quite easily? Let me make sure. I'm just going to have a little look through the camera lens, and excuse my shadow, but you can see now these little, sorry about the strobing. I wonder which light it is. If I find out, I'm going to smash it. There we go. All right, so we've got that there. Lovely. What I'm planning to do here, I've rinsed my brush by the way, and I've wiped it again, because whilst I talk to you, I don't want this to get manky. The important thing to note here is that, let me get the original picture to show you. This side's going to be darker with our coloured background, this side lighter. And the whole point of this picture is dark against light, light against dark. And by that I mean that the stem on this side, because it's against dark background, is light. Here we have all our little bits of light masking fluid. And the bulb of the bulbous part of the teasel against the dark has to be light. Come back to that in a minute. What I'm going to do is soap up again. And it's always better, everyone, to clean your brush and soap it again rather than keep going and mess your brush up. You really, really don't want to do that. So just keep rinsing it and then come back. And what I want to do now is I'm loading the whole of the brush with the mask, get rid of the drip on the end, and holding it at 90 degrees to the paper. Looks awkward, but trust me, it works. I'm coming out and I'm flicking these lovely, long, beautiful, I don't know what they're called, the bits on the bottom of the plant. See, I don't know, I need to find out what the bits of the plants are, don't I, so that I know what I'm talking about. Every time you paint another line, come back in and reload with the mask, because if you don't, you'll land up with a dry brush mark and you don't want it. There we go. See, it didn't work that time, so I've got to come back and I've got to reload. There we go. So you want to do this lovely sweep so that it cuddles the plant, all right? So we're just doing a few of those. I think I want another one that comes down here, down and round like that. Let me bring the camera closer again so that you can see what I've done. Get out of the shadow. Try and stop that light from So sorry about this. Wretched thing. Okay. And then we're going to come back to it. And I'll tell you about the other half of the picture. That's the absolute reverse. This time, over here, this side is lighter, and that means I want to make this edge of the plant dark, and these beautiful lines are going to be painted in with a dark paint. So we have all the light against the dark this side, and over here we have dark against the light. You've got to get your contrast right, and this is the law in any kind of painting: dark against light, light against dark, and there's no arguing it, no conversation about it whatsoever. That's the law, that's the way it is. Okay, we need for that to dry, and if you don't, of course, you're going to come across that with your brush, and it will get into a lovely clean brush, and it really will be the end of the world. So the best thing to do, really, put your fingers on your ears for a second, everybody, because I'm just going to blast it with a hairdryer. Now, if it's any use to you, I have this weekend I've produced a video. You'll find it on YouTube. You'll find it on my website. A video all about masking fluid. It's just 40 minutes long, and it's everything you need to know about it. And you can also buy the mask through my Etsy shop. I'll put all of the details onto the comments at the bottom of this video when I save it, so that you can go back to it. Right, let's put the background in, and it's just simple colours. I'm going to use my hake brush, and as you can see, this is really quite well used. This is goat's hair, rather good, because of course when you use it, it springs back. A hake brush that bends and then stays bent when it comes off the paper is a pain in the neck. This one's quite elderly, because as you can see, it's already molting. Oh dear, oh dear. I need a new one. I'll have to treat myself to a new one. With the background, everybody, if you're not sure, and if you're dithering about, I don't know what to do, and I'm worried about getting runbacks and cauliflowers, the best thing you can do ever is just to wet your brush and to come in, and we're simply going to wet the background. Just wet it. And the reason you're doing this is because it gives you time to breathe, and time to think, and time to panic. My paper, I've stuck it down very well with this brown gummed tape, and the reason for that is because it will not escape. Sometimes if you use masking tape, you find that using a hairdryer, it lifts, and this will not lift. The only downside is that you actually have to cut it out with a ruler and a scalpel, but it doesn't matter. I know that my paper's not going anywhere. I can look at that sideways, and I can see where I have been and where I haven't been, because the paper is matte where I haven't put water. So just make sure you've covered all of it, putting your head sideways so that you can see where you've been. Okay, I'm going to have the table salt at ready. I only want to use a teeny tiny bit of that, just a little bit. And you need thin paint for this. Don't get too excitable. I want to take, first off, I'm going to take my burnt sienna, and we are literally going to throw it on, everybody. I love this colour, you know. This is the warmest, softest, gorgeous orangey brown, and I just love it. Hairs, get out of it. Oh dear, I do need a new brush, don't I? I think this is my northern ancestry. My parents always taught me to be frugal, and there's frugal and there's just pushing it too far, really. Over here, when we want to soften this, water, and just pull that across until it vanishes. Now what we do have to remember is watercolour is a bit of a so-and-so, because it does dry up so much lighter. It can dry up to 1/3 lighter, so just be aware of that. This is really rather lovely. That's raw sienna. I'm not really putting it anywhere in particular, I'm just moving it about and seeing what happens. And then I'm going to use a little bit of burnt umber, and again bring this close to my plant, because I want this to be quite dark on this side. We have to bear in mind that if we want light to show up, it has to have dark behind. I'm just moving that about like so. And again, if I want to get rid of this at the top here, rinse your brush, get rid of the drips. What I'm doing is do it so that you can see what I'm doing here. I'm rinsing and then I'm dabbing and then I'm coming back in. And don't pull it out, push it back. So rinse, get rid of the extra drips and then push it back. Our tendency always is to pull paint out, and it's not what we need to do really. Over here, I'm just going to drop a few areas of colour because it will look most odd if it's absolutely solidly dark. So that's the burnt, no it's not, that is the raw sienna. And then here we go with the burnt sienna. I just want to pull a little bit of that because you can't have, otherwise you'd land up with a picture of two halves. And I just want to introduce a little bit of pale burnt sienna down there. Get rid of those drips. And the next thing we can do that will make it more interesting, let us come in here. I'm going to just, I don't think I want too much of this, so I'm just going to, little bit. We all tend to be a bit too excitable about salt, and it's not a good idea because the salt can take so much colour out that you don't land up with a decent background. This is going to become a cauliflower if I'm not careful, so I'm coming in and I'm just going to lift it, and so is that. So I'm just going to lift it. What I would like to do now with my number 8 is come in, this is Payne's Grey. I'm going to mix some Payne's Grey with some burnt umber, and this time I really do want to go dark next to my plant here. Just introduce that. Now we can't have it, now just out of interest, can you see those two blobs where I've lifted the brush and it's blobbed? If you don't like that, and I don't, I'm going to rinse and dab and then come in and just push it back. Right, that's good. You can't just have that there like it's going to look most odd. What we'll do is we'll just drop a little bit there so that it looks as though it's coming behind both sides. And then I'm going to load my brush with my Payne's Grey and my burnt umber, and you're looking at paint that's going to be single cream thickness, single cream. So again, let me just show you that texture. So single cream, all right, liquid. And I'm loading my brush, and now I want to come in here and I'm just going to, oh, I've got it as well, lovely. That's this top in the wash then later. Bit over here. And it makes it just look a little bit more interesting. Okay. Clean my brush and let that work for a minute. Let's get rid of it on me because that won't do at all. Now we're just going to wait a little minute. This at the moment is shiny, shiny, wet. Now is the time to have a think about, is there any liquid in the edges that we don't want? So I'm just going to lift that out. And there. No hairs to worry about, that's fine. The salt is starting to work. Salt is hygroscopic, so that means that when you put it down there, it sucks the liquid into itself. So what it's doing is it's pulling the paint into the granules of salt. And then when that's dry, you'll just brush it away. And it leaves you these lovely areas here, these interesting areas of lighter snowdrop, snowflake-like areas. Let me bring you a little bit closer so that you can maybe see what I'm whittering about. Okay. Makes it interesting, it just gives you a bit of interest. The point to note with salt is watch out for it, because if you use it on a wet, damp day, salt will continue to pull moisture in just from the atmosphere, and you'll find that it's horrendous with your work. It just sits there and becomes a muddy puddle. It never really dries. If at any stage you like the way your salt is looking, that's the time to come in there and to use the hairdryer and to stop it. What I was waiting for here, when my shine has gone off the paper and we've reached the damp stage, just damp, that's the time when you can go in with water, and you can sprinkle water and you will get very much the same sort of effect. I'm just talking to you and waiting to see what stage I can get in and do that. It's all in the timing, everybody, it's all in the timing. Having said that, I noticed that the salt's working very, very well today. It's a good day for it, and we're getting this lovely effect, so I'm very happy with that. I'm going to just pull you in a bit more so that you can see what I'm talking about. Look at that, it's really working well. Working well today. It doesn't always, and it does depend on your paint as well, because if you're using paint that is thick and heavy, something like yellow ochre, it's big chunks of pigment, and the salt, bless it, can't work on it. But this is the stage, if you want to, you can use a wet brush and you can flick with a wet brush, and a wet brush will give you the same effect. I don't want to do too much of that because it's going to spoil my salt effect. We can wait for that to dry, or we can go in and we can dry it. I'm going to dry it in a minute. I think it's getting to where I want it to be. And in the background, on a picture like this, they kind of look like seed heads that you might be expecting to see out there in a field, if this was sitting in a field and you're blurring the background. If you need any more information about salt, once again, on my website and on YouTube, you will find a video on using salt. So please go and have a look at that if you've got time as well. That you might find that useful. There's lots of videos on there. If you fancy them, please subscribe, and then every time I produce another one, you'll be the first to know about it. I want to stop this salt now, because if I leave that alone, it's going to carry on working because the paper is still damp, and I think I could lose the lovely effect, the spotty effect that I've got now. There we are. You will notice as well that the more you dry, the paper flattens out again, so the fact that it has cockled somewhat, it will dry with this method drum tight again. Once it's all dry, it will be dead flat and it will shrink and it will be nice and tight and sharp. I do not tend to put my papers in the bath, and I don't stretch them. This to me is the stretch really, as far as I'm concerned. I'm using Bockingford. It's a £140 Bockingford, so it's rough and tough for this. Bockingford's good for masking fluid because it doesn't tend to tear and to be a problem. I just like it. It's not terribly absorbent, so of course when you're doing this kind of thing, it all sits on top for a little bit longer, which is useful. The next thing we're going to do is remove our mask, and you can do that with your finger and that will take the salt away as well, so that's fine. But I'm going to use one of these. This is a mask away. It's a lovely little bit of like crepe that we'd have on the bottom of our shoes, and you can use this to just come in here, and now you see why the masking fluid is so terribly useful. And all of a sudden everything comes away and you've got this gorgeous edge against the darkness, and this is exactly what we were aiming for. The salt can come away. It's not quite dry out there. I'm going to leave it alone. And we've got this smashing edge and this light area. The bottom of this here is going to be quite dark. Therefore, I want to come in and mask again and put these in this time. We're going to take our masking fluid, and here's our soap again. We're back to our lovely little rigger brush, so I've wet it and I soap it. A bit more water, I think. Roll it to get rid of the bubbles. And then if I come into my masking fluid, dip the whole thing, get rid of the drip, and then I want to come up through this area. 1, 2, 3. Little ones down here. If we look at our picture, we'll see that there are little bits and pieces down here. And always at 90 degrees, you're using the tip of the brush just to get this sharp, sharp line. All right, so we've done that. Rinse it and just wipe it and clean it. Job done, and we wait for that to dry. Masking fluid, if you're going to use it, seriously, use the thin blue, this thin, pale blue stuff. There's a cream coloured one on the market, and I really struggle with that because I can't get the thin fine lines that I want. You'll find the one that suits you, but I do like this thin stuff. When it changes colour and when it becomes a kind of turquoisey blue, this colour, when it does that, that's when it's had it. Throw it out. Horrible. You'll find that it kind of oxidizes as it gets older, and then you have issues with using it because it will sink into the paper and stick and pull the paper away. I'm just going to blast that with a hairdryer. Sorry, 2 steps. And all I need to do now really is this, and thinking about this edge here, not too much. I want dark down here, but I don't want too much on this side. I don't want to overwhelm it. Therefore, I think if I take my brush, which has vanished, where's my brush? Have you had my brush? There it is, honestly. And I'm using this dark mixture again, this Payne's Grey and Burnt Umber mixture. And this time I'm coming down this edge of this stem. So travel down, use the side of your palm on the paper, just pull your hand down, keep this rigid, use that and just get the depth and then just move down. Rinse, a dab, and then you're going to come in and I want to blur all of that edge. Just soften it. That's lovely. That tip there on the end, get hold of it, push it back. Okay. So we've done that, and the water that I've put down there, it's all bleeding into the water, and that gives you that nice sort of fluffy effect. That's cool. That's what we want. With the rigger brush, same paint. All I'm going to do now is just add a few hints down here. Not all of it. Let some of it run into the water. That's totally cool. And whilst it's wet, I'm going to put the glasses on for this bit. Whilst it's wet, come in and again come from the wet area and pull out from the wet where it's going to bleed, pull out into the dry areas these prickly little bits out here that caught my husband out. That's it. And some of them into the stem, just dots, because you're looking on them straight ahead, so these might just look like dots. And we're just using the tip of that brush, almost 90 degrees, look, so that you get the finest lines. And a zero rigger brush is just a wonderful toy. It really is. I love this for cat's fur, cat whiskers. It's just perfect. There we are. Bear in mind, watercolour is a bit of a blighter, because you'll see that this has all dried up so much lighter than you ever expected. How can that be? It's just so unpredictable, really. You think you've made it dark on the paper, and then the next thing you know, whack, it all changes. I'm going to come into here And again, I want to just blur my colours, and to be able to be sure that I can do that without marks and lines and problems, I'm going to just wet it. Just put water on there, make sure it's all wet. I haven't come right up to the edge, so that I should still get quite a sharp edge. And this side, again, remember, because this is light, I want lighter edge down here, darker edge this side. I'm going to drop in, first of all, this is where our lovely sap green comes into the equation. And for those of you who might want to paint this in the natural colours, this sap green is really good for that. And then I'm taking my, this is burnt sienna. Rinse and dab, and then I'm coming in with some, this is raw sienna. Now we want to introduce some darks, so burnt umber. And this means that you can come in here and get your sharper edge now. Blend it all in, just drop it, mix it, muddle it, zone it. And now, how about, this is the Payne's Grey. Oh, some people hate this colour. I love it. I want that really dark in there. Drop it in. Doesn't matter how you do this, everybody, because you know this is a scruffy plant out in the wild. So you're going to get lumpy bits around the edges. I'm going to bring it up a little bit. Dark round this edge here. I want to introduce just a few little spots of colour there. The stem, where this meets the stem, damp brush. I'm just going to put the shadow in there. And whilst it's still wet, back to our rigger brush here. Some of this I can pull out. Just pull the wet paint out. So you're trying to echo this side, but you're using the existing paint that you have. So just pull it out. Longer, they tend to be longer here at the tip of the seed head. There, like that. And then I'm going to pick up some of that colour, and this time I just want to drop just a few darks in over here. So pick up the colour. Just makes it look more interesting. I don't want to do too much more to that until that's dry, because we might need to go in and actually introduce some more, because I've just said it dries up so much darker. You know, we just need to be sure that it's going to be right. The next thing we need to do here, this, I don't like the way this kind of stops. That's because I lifted off the paper and got that wrong. So what I'm going to do is load up with the dark, and with a careful hand pick it up and pull it back in. That through there to there, up through there. And you can rinse and dab and come through and just soften that blend line there. And then that makes sense of that, because otherwise you're going to look at that and think, what on earth, aren't you? Well, I would anyway. I don't like that, so we keep, just see that there. I'm going to deal with that in a minute, so we'll just wait. I want that to not be shiny anymore. I'm going to come into that now, and we're going to echo this on this side, but we're going to do it with a dark, and that's going to be Neat Payne's Grey. I don't want to smudge and budge anything. So, taking my Payne's Grey, and this time mix it. And again, I want single cream, so plenty of water. And the only way to use a rigger brush is to load the whole brush. So it's a reservoir, originally designed by Turner to paint the rigging on ships. So this is why it's called a rigger brush. But what you want to do with it is put the whole brush in the paint so that you're filling the reservoir. Come out and get rid of the drip on the end. And then this is the brush stroke that we're going to use for, wait for it, 1, 2, 3, up. Up. keep reloading. Don't want dry brushing here. Every time you use it, make sure that you're in the liquid paint, not the gooey paint, because again, I don't want that to be. And I want to wrap it round this seed head, up and round, because this is saying to you when you look at it, look at me, I'm lovely, cuddle me. You're always, always going to pull somebody's eye back into the thing that you want them to see. So this is why I was talking about this. So I'm going to get hold of that. I'm going to use that now. So if you have a problem like that, turn it into something else. Little ones like this. Okay. Not too sure about the height of these, so therefore I'm going to come in and do something completely different with all of that, because I don't like the way that that's worked there. So to balance it, that width, this width, I'm going to come out here, I'm going to do that. And that widens it and gives you something to look at here, all right? If you want any up the background here, something through here that might be behind your plant, take your grey that you've been using, water it down so that you have a pale grey, and again load the brush but get rid of the drips. And then this is the colour that you would put in the background to introduce what might be behind. All right, so it's pale it off to put it behind. Right, we're waiting now for this to dry, because I'd like to come in here again, and I think that the best thing that we could do with that maybe is blast it. So hold on to your hats. I'm going back in with the old hairdryer. Sorry. Right, so you see how that's faded out. As I said to you, 30 to 50% watercolour can do that to you. So I want to come back in, and this is the Payne's grey again, and I'm just going to nudge something just a bit darker in here. Rinse it, dab it, and then come in. There we go. And what I want to do on this side here is just texturise that a little bit. I'm using my mixture of Payne's grey and burnt umber, and with that and the rigger brush, I just want to come in and from the darker areas just lift out a few little spiky spines. Because you'll get your highlights in things like this, but you also get the sort of low areas where you've got the shadows. So we just do a little bit of that. This is a bit harsh, so all we've got to do with that there, again, rinse your brush, get rid of the drip, and then come in. Don't go into it and pull it out. That's always the mistake we make. Go into it as though you're introducing yourself. Hello paint, my name's Brush, it's nice to meet you, and I'm just going to nuzzle you, all right? That is going to create a cauliflower, and I'm not worried about that at all. That's because this was wet paint just seeping into drying paint. But that's okay, quite happy with that, that's all right. It just becomes part of the plant and makes it interesting. Don't like that harsh edge, so again I'm going to come into it. Just want to, that's it, that's better. But I like that very dark contrast to the lighter areas. It might mean that you might want to just now titivate this edge a little, so you might want to make some of that just a tad darker. Again, pop it in, rinse your brush, dab your brush, and this time again you come in from the side that you want to blend. There we go. So that just makes that a bit more interesting, doesn't it? That's it. Finally, if you want to, you can come into something like that and you can load your brush again. I'm going to use a bit of the raw sienna, and I'm going to be really mucky and go into my dark as well. And again, I'm just going to, oh, that's too wet. It's too wet. I don't want it that wet. Just introduce some definite areas of splish. and splash and splosh. That needs to dry, and we will take our masking fluid off and we'll see what we'll end up with here. So excuse me, I'm just going to zap this. Now make sure we're dry, everybody, and then with our mask away, if we lift off these areas here, there we go, that's nice. And this is a little harsh, so all you do with that is a damp brush, so rinse it, dab it, and then come in, go into it from, oh, I've just smudged all that, nice one Sharon, come into it from this side and you're just going to nuzzle it like that, rinse and dab, and then pull it back so that you get the shadow on these from there. There you go. And that is how I would paint my teasel. All right, thank you so much for joining me. I'm so thrilled that you came along to my first live demo. I'm chuffed a bit. Stay safe, everybody, and stay well. And I will see you next time. Keep your eyes open on the Facebook pages and you'll know when the next ones are. All right, love you all. Thank you.